Dragons. It is your girl Lindsay with another episode of the Spine Bookcast, Chronicles of a Bookshop. We're doing a couple episodes from TikTok authors. And so one of our TikTok authors today is Madame Crystal Butterfly. She is the author of Curse of the Frog Prince 1 and 2, Violent Evergreen and the Seeds of Rebellion, Realms, the Hidden Fairy, Wedded Bliss, and Perilous Leper Christmas. And she's become a very good friend of mine on TikTok. How are you doing today?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm good. So let's get into it. How did you get into reading?
I got into reading because it started with my grandma. My grandma was a voracious reader, so she
Right?
ensured my mother would be a voracious reader. And via the fact that my mom's a voracious reader, there was no way I wasn't going to be handed a ton of books. She was
Sure.
determined to get my brother and me to love reading for fun. But I love reading for fun a little bit more than he does.
Of course. Of course. So, what was your favorite childhood book?
I don't really remember. There was one book my teachers had us do a project and I liked it, and it was called Balloon Farm, where this old man would grow balloons on his farm.
Okay.
And people got mad. Well, there was this old dude who was mad at him for being able to grow balloons for reasons. He just didn't like the fact the guy was growing balloons.
Sure.
Everybody else loved it. So the guy he calls the government on the man and says there's something wrong because this man's growing balloons. And people were scared because they didn't want their balloons taken away. So the government came, they looked at it, poked it, it was a normal balloon. So they
Okay.
were all like, well, you can keep the balloon. There's nothing creepy about it.
Sure.
And I don't know if that's 100% my favorite story from when I was a kid, but it was the one that always left the biggest impression on me.
Gotcha. Gotcha. Did you ever have a book like when you got older that you read it and it absolutely just put you on your ass? Like, that is just the best book I've ever read. This is why reading is important kind of book?
Well, there were a ton of books that did that because when I was a teenager, I absolutely devoured Pride and Prejudice like 100 times because I love the sassiness of that book.
Sure. Of
And then, like everybody else, I went through my Harry Potter phase.
course, of course.
And then when I was in college, it became more Chebe's Things Fall Apart because Things Fall Apart feels like it's a book that is just, it's kind of like, how to explain it? It's kind of like this Nigerian slice of story, but for some reason, it just feels like it's written for you to read.
Sure.
Like that is here for you and you should read it. And it's just that enjoyable.
Okay. Okay. What do you do? What are you reading now?
Right now, I'm reading a children's book for review called Princess and Scruffy.
Okay.
And then I have another book I have to read called I Want to Love My Own Life that I'm excited to read that one a lot.
That's awesome. That's awesome. So is that something that you do a lot? Is that you read for other like ARC readers and that kind of stuff? Is that something that you do?
I read books that authors, I have a YouTube channel, Madam Crystal Butterfly, where I do reviews.
Okay.
And the majority of reviews I do are for indie authors. So a lot of indie authors send me books to review.
Okay.
And so, because they want to, I do a butterfly scoring system. They want to earn as many butterflies as they can because the max you can buy butterflies.
Okay. I love that. That is
And
really cool.
yeah, yeah. So right now I'm looking at some of the books I have to review. I haven't really picked up very many books that I want to read in my free time because I have so many books to review. I don't even know if I'll finish them by the time the year is ended.
Sure, sure. So now how did you get into being an ARC reader or a book
Well,
reviewer?
I'm not really an art reader, I'm a reviewer.
Yeah,
What happened was, it's when I very first got in what I call the author game.
sure.
When you enter the world of the author, it's not easy. You have to figure out marketing. You have to find people to help you edit. You have to find proofreaders. You have to find ARC readers. You have to
Yep.
do all of this work. And in the beginning, I was completely alone. I had no author friends to bounce ideas off of. I really didn't know what I was doing in the very beginning. It was a
Sure.
nightmare. And I remembered how hard it was even getting a single review because those closest to you say they'll read your book and review it,
But
but
then they
they're
don't
not
do
going
it.
to do
Yeah.
that. Yeah, they just think they're going to do it,
Well,
but they never will. And I,
go ahead.
Mhm. Yeah, and the thing I recognized was this was very, very hard for me. And I was thinking about all the authors. If I'm having a hard time, they probably are struggling too, especially if I don't have author friends. So I decided I'm going to start doing book reviews on my channel, give them a chance to at least get highlighted. So it, because it doesn't really matter what I score a book, even though I do a scoring thing. It's the fact that I talk about it that piques somebody's interest. And I'm hoping to at least get some eyes on the person's book by talking about it.
Sure, sure. So I was talking to Rob last week, who you know is one of the greatest voices on TikTok. And
Yes, yes, he is.
and last week's podcast. And so we were talking about what a really cool community that Book Talk, quote unquote, has become for people like yourself,
Mhm.
authors, reviewers, narrators, readers, and that kind of stuff. Have you found a solid like group of support within that community?
Yes, I have. I admit in the beginning I was scared of the TikTok. I was terrified of it because they said, "Oh my goodness, they're spying on us."
I hear that a
But later
lot.
yeah, I decided later, you know what? Forget it. Just give it a chance.
Sure.
And one day, you know this author, Dope Black Writer.
Yeah, I love
I
her.
had seen their videos quite a bit. And so I would like their videos because, I'd see one day I noticed they were in a live and I was curious about the live thing. So I jumped in there and Dope Black Writer recognized me because I was always liking their videos. So they're like, oh, let's bring them up. And that's when I learned how fun and kind the book talk community is because they're willing to take a chance on people if they get a little bit of a chance to know them.
Sure, sure. No, I agree absolutely. I've said that more than once that ever since I opened my bookstore, the independently published local authors, even TikTok authors that I've started reading, you guys write some of the best damn books I think I've ever read. More so than like the what do you call it? The more popular
Traditional published
yeah,
because
traditional published.
nobody
Yeah,
can
yeah.
tell us what to do.
Exactly. And I just think that's so cool that you guys just seem to take the writing rules and throw them out the window and just write whatever you want. And I think that freedom has really allowed you guys to have a hell of a story. What are you working
Well, if we
on
didn't
now?
have that, you would get another remake.
Oh, exactly. I'm
Right
so sick
now,
of remakes. God, I'm so sick of remakes. Every single time I see a remake, I'm standing in my store and I just look to my local author and TikTok shelves and go, but why? Because you have
yeah,
all this original content right here. Why are we remaking stuff?
I don't know. They're complaining, saying, "Oh, it's been 15 years since we had a thing with Harry Potter." I'm like, I don't care. You made a
No,
movie.
no. Just wait till we're all dead and then you can remake it.
That's when a remake feels good because then you don't have the original people.
Right.
But either Yeah, but as of right now, what I'm working on is I got 12 writing projects I'm simultaneously working on, but the ones that have my main focus right now are Curse of the Frog Prince Party, which is the last portion
Part three, you
of
said?
my butterfly tale.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, it's the last entry in the Tale of Frog section of my butterfly tales. After that, I'm going to be moving on to some under the sea stuff within that series.
Okay.
And then I am also working on Violet Evergreen Rebel, no, it's Violet Evergreen Rebel Spirit. I keep saying the Rebel Spirit,
Okay.
but that book is up. Also, I'm working on that, and I am going back and forth with a villains kind of romance series,
Okay.
in addition to a couple other fairy tale like series.
Okay. So what attracted you about writing? So I know that you and I've talked about the Frog Prince and how it's a retelling and not like a retelling like the Disney Princess and the Frog, but like the actual story of the Frog Prince. So how did you get into that?
It happened unintentionally. To get the short version of the story, I had just gotten my bachelor's degree in political science. I was plotting to go and do paralegal training,
Mhm.
but three members of my family had cancer, and involved me having to put a lot of focus on that. And because of that, things I was planning to do and stuff my family was trying to help me do kept getting
Sure,
pushed back
sure,
because it wasn't really intentional. It was more we were all forced into that situation.
sure.
So while that was going on, okay, since I was a little kid, I threatened to write a book. And
Okay,
like it's a trend in my family. A lot of my family members talk about writing a book, but they never do it. So I
okay,
decided I was going to put up a shot and write the book since I couldn't really get a lot of stuff I was planning to get started done. And I started work on my book Bloody, which I am still working on because that book is complicated.
oh, I
That's like a
bet.
George R. Martin level book, so that's going to take me a hot minute.
You got this. You
Yeah,
got
it's
this.
just there are other languages that I'm still learning how to speak in the book.
Okay.
But so I started working on that. And then I played, you may have heard this app, it's called Episode. It's one of those story
Yeah,
apps.
yeah, I've seen those. I used to play that.
Yeah, I'm not going to name the story, but I played one and I was into the story at first, but I did not like it as it went on and finished it to learn the end of the story and I didn't like it. But then my mind starts trying to fix it. So next thing I know, Violet Evergreen's story pops in my head, which
Sure.
is very different from the story I didn't like.
Isn't
But
that
her
always
story
the
popped in my
way?
head. Yeah.
You always start
Then, like I
writing one story and then you end up with something completely different by the time you're end of it.
Yeah, it was kind of interesting how it even formed in my head because it was when I got deeper into Violet, it was nothing like the story that I said I didn't like. And I was like,
Sure.
well, this is way better, so I'm not going to complain.
Hmm.
And then Curse of the Frog Prince, the story I sent to your shop.
Yeah, I remember that. It's sitting on my shelf.
Yeah, that story one, I was actually determined not to write because what happened was I had found an author's meeting. And like I said, I had nobody, I didn't know what I was doing. And fun fact, when you're a new author, you get approached by a lot of scammers who want
Oh,
lots of money.
all the time.
Yeah, and I say this compulsively just because I'm trying to spread the word. Real publishers do not ask you for money to publish your book.
I say that
Vanity
all the
publishers do
time.
that.
All the time.
And the majority of vanity publishers are scammers. There are
Mhm.
very few vanity publishers who hold up their word, but it's better not to deal with vanity publishers in general.
Oh, I
Always
agree.
deal with real publishers who do not ask you for money to publish your book. But I went there and they were explaining what vanity publishers were
Mhm.
to me and other stuff. And then they said, because I was telling them about the book I was working on, and they said, oh, you may want to try to write a shorter book alongside your bigger book. And I thought, absolutely freaking not, because this was taking all my time, my energy. I was like, I can't do this. And I
Sure.
was probably having a little hissy fit in my head saying no, no. And then when I left, the idea for Curse of the Frog Prince hit me in the face. I'm like, oh, I guess I'm writing it.
I mean, I started out writing one book. I mean, like with mine, I started out using AI to write out D&D scenarios to give to my DM. And then when I realized it was going to be a really good book, I deleted all the AI and then just started writing a book that I didn't even know I was going to write until I started writing it. It's so weird. And everybody keeps saying the characters will tell you where they want to go. And I was like, how did they do that? They're fake. They're in your head. But no, I totally get it now because the
They
story
just
is
do.
there.
Yeah, one time I was at a physical therapy appointment and I told the therapist how you listen to the voices, they'll tell you what to do. And he's like, what kind of voices are these?
No, it's so funny about that. And And it's so funny to me that like you'll read something, and I don't know if you do this, but I'm in my head, I'm reading something, I know exactly what somebody looks like. Like this is what they look like, this is how tall they are, blah 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 blah. And then you have somebody else read the exact same book and they have a completely different impression. And it's just like, but
Yeah,
no.
yeah, I do the same thing.
Yeah. So how long have you been on TikTok?
I would say, well, technically, I've had a TikTok account for, I'd say, 3 years, but I didn't really do anything with it until a year ago.
Yeah.
So I'd say I'm seriously on TikTok about a year.
Okay. So for those who have objections to TikTok, I really want to get into this. Like, what do you think is the benefit as a independent writer? Like, why do you think that TikTok has resonated so much for independently published authors and narrators and book readers and that kind of stuff?
I think the TikTok algorithm in its own way just helps connect us better because before TikTok, I was hardcore on BookTube on YouTube, and I was only able to seriously connect with a very small amount of writers on there. Most other
Sure,
authors I connected with, I had gone to events,
sure,
but YouTube is harder to connect. And it's YouTube, I guess because the system's different, it's just harder to connect with other authors on there. And it's not like there aren't a lot of nice people on there. I've met
right.
some very nice people, but it's harder with
Yeah,
YouTube algorithm. But TikTok, it's fairly easy. It's like the second TikTok, I talked to one group of authors and was looking at books. TikTok seemed to know automatically where to send me, and it started sending me to authors and sending me to narrators, everybody in this sphere within the book talk realm. And I found it interesting because it's like it just knew where to send me
mm,
for people that I needed to communicate with.
mm, mm.
So I think it could be how their algorithm works.
Okay. Do you see anything about TikTok? Because I mean, we talk about the good things, but surely there's some negative things about TikTok as well. Have you run into any issues like that?
Well, that I don't like the whole thing where it's hypersensitive censoring our words because I get it wanting to censor some things, but when it censored one of our friends for saying the word gay,
Mhm.
then I was a little PO'd. And it does that on and off. It's like there are a lot of things I like about TikTok, but there are also some negatives where TikTok will just randomly just get rid of a person's life for a few weeks saying you said something, or even try to say you did something you didn't do. That's something I really do not like that TikTok does.
Yeah. Well, and I think it's really weird, and I can't remember if you and I talked about this or if one of the other authors did, but it's very reminiscent of 1984 and like the word police and
Mm-hmm.
the thought police of what words we can say and what words we can't say. And there's almost this entire dictionary of words that are the alternative of the words that we want to say that we've had to invent so that TikTok doesn't flag us or kick us off.
Yeah, it's like a 5-year-old trying to swear.
That's a great way to describe it. Um, so do you think that that's gotten worse or better since they had that little blip of blocking on TikTok?
Honestly, I don't know, and I'm not going to get into politics, but
Sure,
only thing
no.
since the blip happened was suddenly more conservative media, and I don't really, I wondering if something's going on there because it did that. And that's really the only massive change I noticed.
Yeah,
I haven't really seen a change with how it gets people with lives and stuff like that.
sure, sure. So, on your book, Violent Evergreen and the Seeds of Rebellion, talk to me about that book. Talk to me about what's going on with that book.
Well, in Violet Evergreen in the Seeds of Rebellion, it's about this young girl named Violet. Her parents have been murdered, and I
Mhm.
started out with a custody battle. She has one side with relatives, they have a lot of money, they're very they do a lot of for the community, and other relatives who are broke and they're not nice and they came out of nowhere. She doesn't even know them. They interact with her in her entire life.
Okay.
And that's where I really, because with this book, what I'm trying to do is force people to really start thinking deeper about stuff
Sure.
because the court case goes on, and you would think automatically, oh, she's to the rich family. No, she ended up going to the people who are mean to her. The other side of the family has to make a deal with them nearby.
Yeah.
And I went with this book because Violet suffers a lot of abuse and other
Sure.
things. I want with this book to get people to start thinking, why did this happen? What's going on here?
Sure.
Why is, because this is a world of magic, because everybody has magic in their world.
Sure.
It's a story where I'm saying, okay, you need to start peeling back the covers. Don't just put blinders on. You need to start asking questions and questioning everything.
Okay. So how many is it? So it's just the one book, but how many books are you going to have in that series, or is it just a one-off?
Right now, I think it's four. I'm saying I think because the muse will do stuff like when it
Muse
has
will
you
do
write
what the muse
several
will do.
characters and then changes its mind and says, no,
Mhm.
that didn't happen. This
Mhm.
happened.
Yep, it happens every time. I think like so I wrote when I started this one book, it was just going to be a one book, and now I'm like, oh, I'm at three, and this is what's going to happen. And do you have a muse? Like, who's your muse?
It's the voice that speaks to me in my head. And my mom tells me just do whatever it says. Because I was complaining to her the other day because I thought I was going somewhere, I was going to be done. And then it flipped on me and she was like, well, just listen to your muse. Don't
Right,
question it.
right. So I know that some of our TikTok friends write very, very, very spicy books. What's the spice level on your books?
I write spicy, but I always fade to black because my problem with writing spice is I don't know what everybody's kink is, and I feel like if I wrote a full-on sex scene, that I would be too concerned with everybody's kink to write it properly. So
Yeah.
I always have some intense romantic moments, but when it gets to the hardcore part of the hot and heavy, that's when I fade to black because I'm thinking I'm gonna think too much about this. Let me just
Sure.
fade to black right here.
I struggle with that when I was writing my scenes too. And so how I dealt with that is I contacted one of the writers in my shop, Bella Brandon, and I said, hey, can I
Mhm.
send you this scene and can you give me some feedback on it? Let me know what you think. And I think I'm going to end up doing that with Heather, who wrote the probably one of the spiciest books that I've read from a TikTok author. And we always badger her like, okay, so when's the second one coming out? When's the second one? And she's gonna have actually our guest last week. She's gonna have Rob narrate it, which is gonna be spectacular. So, um,
That sounds like a good read.
all right, oh my gosh. So, talk to me about the Realms of the Hidden Fairy. What is that one about? Because I don't think I've read that one yet.
Yeah, Realms of Hidden Fairy is a story of this young girl named Willow. She's in San Francisco. She's at that phase of her life where everything's going to change. She's
Sure.
18, just got out of high school. And she's debating what college to go to.
Mm-hmm.
And in this story, Willow also has a huge question. What happened to her parents? Because when she was 3, her aunt ran off with her because
Mm-hmm.
she said something happened to her parents and she doesn't give her the full details. Now, her aunt has tried, but every time her aunt tries to tell Willow what happened to her parents because the aunt knows, she gets hit with this crippling fear and everybody thinks she has PTSD. But the boyfriend has tried to get her to go to a therapist for that. She won't go.
Mm-hmm.
And she keeps trying to tell Willow what happened, but the same thing keeps happening. It's like she gets so afraid she can't speak. And Willow's starting to think, I need to figure out what happened to my parents. I really want to know, where are they? What's going on here? And so one night when she's just frustrated, she decides to go hang out at a local park just to cool her head a little bit. And while she's trying to think, she hears a noise. And when
Okay.
she goes to investigate what the noise is, she sees a fairy fighting a troll.
Okay.
Yeah, after the troll fairy altercation, Willow is starting to realize things in her world may not be 100% what she thinks they are, and it starts opening the floodgates to a lot of secrets and a serious adventure she's going to have to go on to learn the truth.
Okay, okay, cool. I love that. Love that. Are you going to have more than one book in that series?
Yes,
Okay. And then the other ones that you have, the Wedded Bliss and the Perilous Love for Christmas. Why Christmas?
because it takes place during the Christmas season. That's the only reason. That's the only connection. It's kind of like, Die Hard is technically not a Christmas
It
movie, but
is.
everybody calls it a
It is a
Christmas movie.
Christmas movie, and I will die on that hill because his wife's name is Holly, for God's sakes. It is a Christmas movie. It is a
Yeah,
Christmas
because
movie.
my book takes place during Christmas, and every ish book in that series will eventually Christmas will happen. It doesn't start during Christmas, but Christmas is going to happen eventually in the story. And I'm like, okay, fine, this is going to be my Christmas book because Christmas is there. Also, we got a thing with women being held captive their whole life. There's some
Mhm.
magical red cards, and they're being forced to be subservient to men.
Sure.
And
Oh,
United States being a kingdom instead of a democracy and all of that.
sure.
Let's say The Handmaid's Tale may have had some influence.
Oh God, that that is such a good book. But I love that Margaret Atwood has come out saying, that was a warning, not an instruction manual. Oh, where? Okay, so since
It
you
was
say
like a huge
that,
warning.
do what?
I was like, it was a huge warning. I read the book and I watched the show. It's like a huge warning.
I can't watch the show. I tried to watch the show and I got through season one. And then when they started season two, I realized I don't think I can watch this because I am literally staying angry all the damn time.
Yeah, I get that.
Yeah,
Because what got me to watch it is that more than one season was out so I could video bomb it. So because
sure,
I video bombed it, I was able to get really into it.
sure. What do you love about writing so much? Because I mean, you've written several books. So what do you love about writing so much?
I like it because it's like you're peering into this world that nobody else can see, and you're meeting all these people that nobody else knows, and you're able to tell their story and introduce these new and fascinating things
Mm-hmm.
that a lot of people may not have thought of. And
Yeah,
it's just such a fun ride to see the entire story through.
sure. What do you not like about writing?
I don't like the editing part. I do not
Right.
like later having to form a book when I'm done writing. There's a lot of stuff. How long it takes to get to a scene that your brain replays in your head compulsively, but you can't write it yet.
Right, over and over. Yeah, no, for sure, for sure. Um, so when did you write your first, like when did you write your first book?
Well, I started writing my first book probably in 2017, but I didn't publish a book till 2019.
Okay. What was the first one that you published?
Curse of the Frog Prince, Part One.
Okay. Why that particular story? I'm curious.
It was shorter, so it took me less time to write. And when I was writing it, I thought it was going to be a one-off, and I thought I was only going to call it Curse of the Frog Prince. But when I got to the end, I realized it was going to be a series, and then later I realized it was going to be this full-on fairy tale series. So I labeled it Curse of the Frog Prince Part One, because I
Okay.
knew there would be three parts in the Frogs Tale of Frogs portion of this series.
Okay. Well, I guess what I mean is why the Frog Prince? Like there's all these other retellings of different stuff, and I've never heard one done of that one. So I'm really curious as to why that one stuck with you so much.
Well, I can't tell you the ending because then people won't go to
Yeah,
your
don't
store
do
to
that.
buy it.
No, don't do
But when I was leaving that authors group meeting, I got a flash of the ending and it told me it was going to be a Frog Prince story. So my muse just handed me a Frog Prince story. I don't know why it suddenly just popped all of that in my head, but them's the breaks. It
Okay.
just did it at random.
Okay. Are there any other fairy tales that you want to rewrite?
There are a ton of them. I'm working on a couple that feature Snow White and the Evil Queen.
Okay. Any others?
Um, there were others because I know in the next one, after I'm done with the frog section, it's going to be the Little Mermaid spin, only this time it's going to be a merman.
Okay. Why Little Mermaid?
I'm not really sure. Part of me thinks it's because I liked the Little Mermaid movie when I was a kid. Maybe that's why my brain introduced it. But it
Okay.
was trying, but it has introduced this whole underwater story, and it's
Okay.
going to be a mix between going underwater and going on land for this particular character because under the sea, the kingdom where he lives is going to shit. And he has a thing for this woman who is on land. She is a widow. Her in-laws are trying to sell her, and he's trying to think, well, do I want to stay under the sea? Everything here is just going to crap. All my friends are leaving. I'll be alone pretty soon. Maybe I should take a chance on going up on land and being with her.
Okay. Gotcha. So wait, so it's going to be a he instead of a she?
Yeah.
I love that. So it's going to be a merman
Yeah.
instead.
I love the fact that early in the book, I saw my brain told me how his girlfriend's not going to know how their relationship would work, and yet he gets on land and lets his tail drive off, and she sees something below.
Okay, Miss Ma'am. Miss, I'm not right.
That's a scene I'm
Spicy.
most excited to write.
I bet it is. Oh, that's going to be great. So as an independent author, how do you find someone to do your editing and your cover art and that kind of stuff? How do you go about doing that since you don't have the traditional publishing?
Well, it takes a minute. In my case, my editor is a family friend who, with my first book, because I couldn't really find a good editor, I was trying to
Right.
use Fiverr, but I couldn't really find a good editor on there. She read my book and she's very good with editing, so she offered to be my editor until I could find one of the really expensive ones.
Sure.
So that was a blessing because she does do a really good job removing a lot of errors from my manuscripts.
Sure.
The cover was a bit more complicated. Originally, I was hiring an artist, but hiring an artist can be more expensive
Sure.
and then having that art converted into a book cover. But then thankfully, one of my other author friends, his name is Peter Okonkwo, he writes a lot of different poetry.
Okay.
He introduced me to his book cover person, and that was good because it brought the price of me getting a book cover made to go down dramatically. And then later I met Ruby, who also is my other book cover person, and she also gives me a more fair price for book covers, which makes it a lot easier because before I was spending over $100.
Oh my God. Okay. Gotcha. So
Yeah, and
go ahead.
also, and the only alternative, because I at least was not spending in the 200s or 300s, but at the time, there's this website, I forget what it's called, where you can have professional book cover artists make you audition and make you a book cover, but that one's going to cost you $300. And I wasn't seeing any better alternatives.
Yeah, yeah, no, absolutely. So, I know that we were talking last night when we were on TikTok about how, when you're writing certain scenes, you get stuck in that repetitive word thing. And you guys mentioned a couple things. One of the ones that you mentioned was Word Hippo. Talk to me about Word Hippo. Like, how did you find that?
I learned about Word Hippo because of our TikTok author group. They told me about Word Hippo. The
Okay.
original thing I used with words was, well, first I'm in my first book, I made a lot of mistake. I used the word and too much, and my mother will never let that down. She keeps saying, "Oh, you wrote and,"
Right?
because
No,
she got
I did that
frustrated because I put
same.
and in there way too much.
I did
But
the same
really,
thing.
yeah. For a lot of words, I will either use a regular thesaurus or I use my emotion thesaurus.
What is an emotion thesaurus?
Um, can't fully remember the name of the book, but there is a book called The Emotion Thesaurus. It was written by another author who realized a lot of authors have a hard time writing the emotional descriptions, like when somebody's sad, the physical traits and everything like that.
Right.
So I had heard about it on YouTube. It was from a author, one of the YouTube authors. I used to watch her channel and she would give recommendations. And she said, if you're having trouble writing emotional scenes, then this
Mhm.
emotion thesaurus can help give you a bit more of a guide. And I like it because a lot of times I'm trying to write something romantic or somebody being frustrated, and it's hard to picture how to show the audience that. And it gives you words you can use to show it and not just tell them, oh, they're angry or they're sad.
Yeah, right. Absolutely. No, I think yeah. And I mean, I noticed that I've struggled with that too. And actually sitting down to write a book, I found there are certain words that I constantly repeat because it's a crutch. And so I've had to relearn how to use a thesaurus and find different words that make sense for the scene, and that certain words don't make sense, but certain do. So I think that's really cool that because you guys also mentioned it was what was the other one? The Word Hippo, and there was the naughty words for nice girls, I think is what Heather mentioned last night. I think it's really interesting that there's all these books now to help writers write things without doing that repeated thing.
Yeah, I may or may not have bought that book after Heather mentioned it to
It's
write
on
more
my
intimacy
list. It's
scenes.
on my list as well. So is the emotional thesaurus. That one's going to be on my list when we get done today. So,
Yeah, I was able to find the ebooks for cheaper, and I think
sure.
those are a little bit more convenient because you're gonna want to look it at up in your phone. Because with
Yeah.
the emotion thesaurus, that one I look at a lot. It's to the point where it's so beat up because I'm always looking in there for how do I describe this person crying?
Oh, I know. And I think before I do my re-edits on my first book, I'm going to get those so that I can flag certain things because I think that's something that I'm going to need help with because I need help with my world building. Is there a book that you have found that you read that we haven't mentioned already, that has helped you become a better writer that you would recommend for new writers?
Not really, because the emotion thesaurus was the main key thing. Because, like I said in the beginning, I was alone. I didn't have any author friends to bounce ideas off of or tell me resources I could use that were much cheaper. Anyway, I'll get off that rant. It's interesting when you make author friends how they teach you how you can save so much.
Oh, yeah,
But
for sure.
the emotion thesaurus, I feel, was the key thing that got me through in the beginning of learning how be able to describe things and do a lot of things better only because I didn't have anybody to bounce ideas off of. And it was at least the first major tool I had that helped me start to, I would say, be able to learn more stuff. Also, this isn't a book, it's a person. I will also give Brandon Sanderson some credit.
Okay, I like Brandon
He,
Sanderson.
yeah, he would videotape and put on YouTube some of his writing courses.
Okay,
And I would watch it and he would break some stuff down that I needed to know. And I really did appreciate that because it gave me a well of information that I didn't know about writing.
sure. No, I think that that's fair, and I think it's really interesting how a lot of writers now are sitting there doing the thing where they try to teach what they've learned to other people, which is so, I think, incredibly important. And I really love that that's become a thread with a lot of writers now. Like Maggie Stiefvater does it, Carrie Jones does it. Um, they just have these like classes and little workshops where they talk to new authors and say, hey, these are things that you should work on and that kind of stuff. Have you ever thought about doing anything like that yourself now that you are kind of a seasoned writer?
People have suggested that to me in the past and doing that. I just have because the book reviews plus the books plus going to events to sell the books and everything is a lot on my plate. So I
Right.
figured if I start trying to teach a writing course or do a video writing course, because I did start off my YouTube giving author advice,
Mm-hmm.
I realized doing a full-blown course is going to be a little too much for me. Combined with a lot of stuff I teach, a lot of authors have already said, and I don't want to regurgitate a ton of information.
Sure, sure, sure. Yeah, no, I think that if you're going to do something like that, the goal should not be regurgitating information, but maybe finding other ways to get people to understand the process, maybe.
Mhm. Yeah, I agree.
Yeah. So, what have you gotten feedback on your books? Like, what have people said about your books?
I've gotten feedback. One person claimed this was in a review that Amazon removed because for some reason Amazon likes removing reviews, but I
Sure.
found it amusing. It was a review. A person was angry at me for how dare I use profanity in my book.
Okay.
Yeah. And then another person wrote a review. I'm wondering if that person read that other person's review because they said, well, I'm not a fan of profanity, but the author said before you get to the first chapter that there's profanity in the book.
Sure, sure. So
Yeah.
that
But
brings me to trigger warning. So now I don't ever remember that being a thing, but lately there has been a trend with trigger warnings in books. Is that something that you find is helpful for people, or do you think that that can sometimes deter people from reading books?
well, I think it is helpful because like with Curse of the Frog Prince, I originally had a frog on the cover, and I learned it doesn't matter what you write in your synopsis on the book, people judge it by the cover
Oh,
first.
absolutely.
Because there was a frog on the cover, people pre-decided it was a children book, even though before you get to the first chapter, I wrote this is a story for an adults and older teenagers due to
Hmm.
violence and sexual situation.
Sure.
They were determined no matter what to call it a kids book. They would even skip my warning and read into it and complain about it not being a children's book. And so I feel like trigger warnings are good because a lot of people are paying attention when they pick up the book. If
Sure.
they do have a trigger, and they're the type who pays attention when they pick up a book to see what it's about before they start reading it, if they know they have certain triggers, it's nice to warn them ahead of time
Sure.
than let them find out later and get upset and wish there was some kind of warning.
Right. No, I agree. I agree. Well, as much as I know you and I can talk all day, because we do
Mhm.
quite frequently. We are out of time. So, madam, I really appreciate you joining me on this Sunday morning. Thank you so much for taking time out of your very busy schedule to talk to me today.
No problem.
Well, everybody, make sure that you go to the Spine and grab her books. They are on the shelves. Curse of the Frog Prince, one, and I do believe I have the second one as well. If my memory is
No, you don't have the second one yet. I was
not yet.
plotting to send that to you in a little bit later because I was trying to make sure that I noticed an error in it. So we're doing a edit. Plus, I'm making special editions of my books.
Okay.
So I decided I'm going to send you part. When I send you part two, you'll be getting the special edition of Curse of Frog Prince Part One with it, and the special edition for Curse of the Frog Prince Part Two.
Yay! Well, thank you very much for hanging with us today, guys. Thank you so much for listening to another episode of the Spine Bookcast. Make sure you get Madam Crystal's books. I promise you, you will not be disappointed. And don't forget to like, follow, and share. Have a great day, Book Dragons. Bye.